Follow 912 on Amazon Music or with Wondery Plus to binge all 7 episodes right now. Episode 4. People Knew.
Nobody knows what Manhattan means, by the way. And the best, most scholarly explanation I've seen is place where wood is gathered for bows. Not a fun explanation to make as a tour guide, right? So we tend to leave that one out.
Mark Roberts loves New York. He loves what New York is, he loves what it was, and he loves to tell people about it.
I was one of the very first rollerblading tour guides out there, back when those were really, really hot.
Mark is already tall, so the rollerblades made him about 6'7", which is actually perfect for a New York City tour guide. Easier for his tour groups to follow him as he glided through the crowds, as he opined.
And my friends would say, oh man, what a drag, because New Yorkers hate tourists, you know? Guess what? They're the best people in the world. They're jazzed about being where they are, right? Everybody's on vacation. They're excited about everything they're seeing. They are literally the best people to spend your time with.
Eventually, Mark ditched the rollerblades and got serious, and made his New York City tour guide status official.
I had the highest score in the history of the New York City tour guide exam.
Wow.
They may tell everybody who does well that. I don't know.
Tours of the World Trade Center were a big part of Mark's business, before and even more so after 9/11. Because after the cleanup was finally complete in 2002, but before the steel and cement core of the new One World Trade Center began rising in 2006, there was an in-between time, when the big attraction was the lack of one.
A big hole in the ground. A 16-acre hole in the ground.
A giant, vacuous hole. 12 football fields of nothing. But people wanted to see it. In fact, the first structure designed and built on the World Trade Center site, it wasn't a building. It was a viewing platform where Mark would take those tourists so they could get a better look at that hole.
People were stunned, generally. People would look up. Right, and there's nothing to see. It's just the sky, you know, but they'd look up trying to imagine how high the towers were, knowing that people jumped from up there, knowing that airplanes hit right up there. That empty sky, that absence.
It's odd, on some level, that people come to see an absence. It's a hole. But hey, Grand Canyon, that's a hole. People love it. Come from all over. But pretty soon, it would become clear that Ground Zero had a different kind of draw, attracting more than just the curious looking to pay their respects or maybe buy a t-shirt. This hole had gravity, like the swirling outer space kind, and it began pulling in all sorts of people. People for whom it wasn't just a hole. For them, it was evidence of something that the rest of us were too blind to see. From Pineapple Street Studios, Amazon Music, and Wondery, this is 912.
First of all, I don't fucking know what happened on 9/11. Second of all, I made it clear to you that I'm not doing this interview to have another one of those conversations that make me feel like I'm still in 2006. Like, nobody is the same person they were 15 years ago.
How are you different than you were 15 years ago?
Well, I mean, I'm not a angsty teenager anymore, so that definitely helps.
Well, you're a little angsty. Dylan Avery is the director of a documentary called Loose Change, self-released in 2005. Loose Change is the seminal 9/11 conspiracy film, the first big booster rocket for 9/11 was an inside job. Loose Change is widely acknowledged as the first film to ever go viral online, before conspiracy theories spread like they do today, like dandelion seeds or snot from a sneeze.
That's all people want to talk to me about is 9/11 and Loose Change and conspiracy theories.
Dylan has been saying no a lot lately.
15 years later, I'm getting emails from Nightline, like, hey, we're doing a special about conspiracy theories and we'd love to interview you. It's like, what part of that email do you think that I'm going to jump on where I'm like, oh boy,
Dylan bristles at what is being pinned on him now as being the source, the original superspreader of the conspiracies that have consumed us since.
Everything that's happening now is bananas. Sandy Hook is bananas, Flat Earth is bananas, QAnon is bananas, and I realize there's some people that are probably like listening and rolling their eyes like, oh yeah, how convenient that you think all those other conspiracy theories are bananas, but you don't think your own pet theory is bananas. And everyone said, oh, well, he made that to be famous. He made that to kickstart his filmmaking career. And I'm like, are you out of your fucking mind? Like, why? Why would I do that? Like, why would I put so much time and effort into that project, specifically with the end goal of like, boy, I can't wait for millions of people to see this and to hate my fucking guts.
My deal with Avery in order to have this conversation is that I'm not going to ask him about what's actually in the movie. It's truth or non-truth, which is fine by me. Because what I want to talk about is what happened to the movie and to Dylan along the way, on his years-long journey to wrap his brain around what happened on 9/11.
I wasn't supposed to be in high school when 9/11 happened, but I was.
On September 11th, Dylan was a super senior at Oneonta High School in upstate New York, held back to pass an economics class so he could get his diploma. A picture from the school paper on 9/12 shows Dylan watching it all happen in disbelief on a boxy TV plopped in front of the class. Most of the students are watching from their seats. Dylan is on the floor, positioned right in front. He was 17 at the time. Dylan gets his diploma soon after, and like any decent, scrappy, aspiring filmmaker should, he begins shooting his first movie with a couple of buddies, a hyper-indie affair that he writes himself.
Your standard, like, enemy of the state, French Connection, espionage type thing, or at least, an 18-year-old trying to make his version of that. I made all the classic first-time filmmaker mistakes. Cast your friends, shoot it on a shitty camera with no lighting, sound. There's a mic on the camera, what do you mean sound?
And even though it is fiction, the plot definitely tells you where his head is at. What was the narrative for that film?
Basically, 3 kids discover a conspiracy behind 9/11, and the closer they get to the truth, the closer the government gets to them.
The movie's terrible, he knows it, so he abandons the fictional threads in the film, and instead it becomes a documentary. It's written and edited by Dylan himself. He even narrates the film.
September 11th. 2001. The National Reconnaissance Office in Chantilly, Virginia.
That's what you're listening to now. Actually, you're listening to the second cut of the film he made. He revises a lot.
3 F-16s from Washington, D.C.'s National Guard at Andrews Air Force Base, 15 miles from the Pentagon, are flown 180 nautical miles away.
The film pieces together all the little bits of information about 9/11 that he suspects add up to something bigger, hence the name Loose Change. Like, if the plane crashed into the Pentagon, how come the hole it made is so small? More like a hole a cruise missile would make. Or why did the collapse of the towers look so controlled? Like it was pre-planned, rather than caused by the planes themselves.
In all the videos of the collapses, explosions can be seen bursting from the building 20 to 30 stories below the demolition wave.
And the upshot? Either the government knew that 9/11 was going to happen and didn't stop it, or worse, they did it themselves. A false flag operation, so they could launch wars in the Middle East. Our very own Reichstag fire.
So what are we going to do about it? Anything. Share this information with friends, family, total strangers, hold screenings.
And all the things that make the movie amateurish are also the things that give it its authenticity and its urgency.
Whatever you have to do to get the word out, it's up to you. Ask questions. Demand answers.
Content-wise, he is not big on fact-checking. In fact, I think it's fair to say he is extremely small on fact-checking. But no matter, it's done, and in 2005, he orders 1,000 copies on DVD.
The guy's unloading them all, and, I'm so excited. I can't wait. I open one of the boxes right there, and I take out, this is first edition Loose Change DVD. I have one around here somewhere. But, like, the OG DVD, and I'm looking at it, he's like, can I have one? And I was like, yeah, sure, here you go. You are officially the first person to have a DVD of Loose Change.
And that is how it starts.
And then I took one copy to work at Red Lobster. I gave that DVD to one coworker, and then, I'd see him a couple days later, and I was like, oh man, did you watch the DVD? Did you bring it? He's like, oh, I brought it, but I gave it to so-and-so.
Chatter about the film starts to grow on internet forums with names like letsroll.org and 911blogger.com.
And we have something today that we're offering for a donation of $100. It's the Loose Change, the brand new film by Dylan Avery. We are offering it here.
KPFK, a lefty radio station in Los Angeles, promotes the film and uses it in their fund drives. Dylan starts selling DVDs of the movie at cost, 50 or 100 at a time, delivered right on the spindle, no covers, so people could pass them around and spread the word.
Maybe the airplanes did not take down the Twin Towers, and maybe the government is covering it all up. Showbiz Tonight investigates the startling allegations.
Dylan puts Loose Change online, and pretty soon it tops the Google 100 video list. That is as YouTubey as it got back then, surpassing the previous number one, Woman Gets Punched in the Face. And Dylan himself starts getting attention. But not like, who is this nutcase attention, more like, who is this new filmmaker attention.
The common review from a lot of people was, I've been trying to find a way to put into words how I feel about 9/11, and this is the film that I saw that allowed me to do that. Take that for whatever you will, but there were a lot of people who, when they saw Loose Change, it tapped into something that they were already feeling.
There also are conspiracy theories of huge proportions.
We're watching a Dutch chat show from 2006.
And you suggested we show a part of or a clip of the documentary Loose Change by Dylan Avery.
It's just a black backdrop and a tiny table shared by the host, the woman speaking, and director David Lynch, smoking a cigarette down to the butt.
And it was a film that has been watched by 10 million viewers because you could see it through the internet.
This is Twin Peaks, Blue Velvet, Mulholland Drive, David Lynch, using his time on talk shows to talk about Dylan's movie. It impacted him that much.
Do you think it's convincing what they tell in the film?
It's not so much what they say; it's the things that make you look at what you thought you saw in a different light, and you don't have to believe everything in the documentary to still have questions come up.
And the suggestion that the American government is behind it? What does it
too
mean?
big for people to think about. It's too big.
What do you mean?
It's just, it's like something no one wants to think about.
Around the time that Dylan was piecing together his own theories of what happened, there was another investigation going on. The 9/11 Commission, the blue ribbon panel created by Congress, had been doing its own inquiry into the attacks and released its report in the summer of 2004, not long before Loose Change dropped. The results? The U.S. government fucked up royally. Mistake after mistake in the lead up to the attacks that allowed them to materialize, to kill so many and cause so much damage. But here's the thing. The commission establishes fault, but it lays no blame. 13 chapters, 428 pages, 1,742 footnotes detailing all the ways the politicians, the military, the FBI, the CIA, every level of federal government from the top on down, all the ways they had screwed the pooch. And yet, no one is losing their job. No one is sacrificed on the altar. And 9/11 certainly, they say, was not an inside job. Case closed. And to some, this is deeply unsatisfying. It is profoundly fishy. And Loose Change and conspiracy theories like it become the alternative. And then, the 5-year anniversary of 9/11.
That was our big year. It's the 5-year anniversary of 9/11. It's, America loves its 5s and 10s. The media requests started coming in. College campuses wanted to fly us there for events and screenings and all that.
Fans of Loose Change are becoming true believers, and they begin to ask, what can we do? How can we help?
We told them all, we want anybody who can to come to New York City this year.
For the 5th anniversary, to voice the belief that the government is hiding something. Back to the big hole, the big blank. where people are flocking in droves, still, filling in that emptiness with what started as one shared meaning, but that has splintered so dramatically in the 5 years since. To some, that hole is hallowed ground. It's sacred. To others, it's the heart of American patriotism. And to the new crowd about to show up, it's the scene of the crime. No one can prevent every crime everywhere or stop every criminal. That is superhero stuff. But what you can do when it comes to your own home is deter it. That is what SimpliSafe's new wireless outdoor security camera does. It's wireless, so it can install anywhere, extending SimpliSafe's perimeter of defense from your windows and doors to the far corners of the property. SimpliSafe is the system that U.S. News & World Report named Best Home Security System of 2021. And their brand new outdoor security camera is engineered with all the advanced tech and security features you want and need to help you keep your family safe. It has an ultra-wide 140-degree field of view, so you can keep watch over your entire yard, and it has 1080p HD resolution with an 8x zoom. To learn more about the exciting new SimpliSafe wireless outdoor security camera, visit simplisafe.com/912. SimpliSafe is offering 20% off your entire new system and your first month of monitoring service free when you enroll in interactive monitoring. Again, that's simplisafe.com/912, NINETWELVE. In 2008, the residents of an apartment complex in Redmond hosted a big Halloween party. But before the night was over, one of them was murdered. Suspect is a new true crime series that returns to the scene of the crime for a story about cutting-edge forensic science and mislaid justice. Stick around to the end of this episode to hear a preview of Suspect.
I was giving tours that included the World Trade Center site almost every single day.
Mark Roberts had been coming for 5 years now, showing groups of tourists that absence.
And we would all come and look into that hole, and I would talk about what happened there. I never once had anybody ask me about a 9/11 conspiracy.
Until one day, he was on an internet forum, and somebody asks,
"Hey, has anybody seen this video called Loose Change? I just watched it. It's driving me crazy, and apparently it's really popular."
Mark tracks down a copy, which by this point is not hard to do.
And I watched it with my jaw hanging open because every single claim they made in this movie were absurdly easy to disprove.
And while Dylan prefers not to talk about the content of Loose Change, Mark is more than happy to.
Some of them are so obvious, like Flight 93, they say didn't crash in Shanksville.
When it went off course at 8:56 over Cleveland, Ohio.
Here's that section of the movie.
According to the official story, Flight 93 was headed for the White House when it was overpowered by a group of passengers and crashed in Shanksville, Pennsylvania.
The movie claims that if you look at the aerial photos from the crash site, there is essentially no identifiable wreckage. It's just a burnt gash on the ground. If a plane crashed, where's the plane?
That airplane hit the ground nose down at 580 miles an hour. There isn't going to be a lot of big stuff left. There were hundreds and hundreds of people on the site picking up 95% of the aircraft they recovered. And so the loose change people will say, "Oh, look at this picture taken from far away. Well, you don't see an airplane there. Therefore, an airplane didn't land there."
So if Flight 93 didn't go down in Shanksville, then where? You ready for this? Cleveland. At 11:43.
I'm not going to get into the whole Cleveland theory, but let's just say it's not hard for Mark to rebut. And then Mark does a little digging to see how the film is being received. And he begins to think,
there was a fairly organized, very aggressive, international, sometimes well-funded attempt to falsely revise history. And I'm a history guy. I work right now at 3 different history museums, right? Somebody needs to do something about this. I wound up writing in a week a 150-page analysis of the movie.
okay, already my alarm bells are going off.
Yeah.
That's in a week?
Yeah, I was mad.
Mark creates a line-by-line rebuttal to the movie. Line by line. So you can cross-reference any claim in the film with the facts. Structural engineering, air defense issues, demolitions data. I'm just curious as to what your apartment looked like at this point.
I didn't have pictures with strings connecting them up on the walls, if you're wondering about that.
But you see where I'm going with it, right?
Yeah, you should have seen my hard drive. People have said to me, you can't be rational when you're angry. Anger is what sustained me through a solid year and a half of 9/11 conspiracy research and confronting these people at Ground Zero.
What? You're confronting people at Ground Zero?
I started to, yeah.
I just want to be clear that you don't know what the NIST report says caused the towers to collapse.
And there's video. Lots of it.
Do I know every single fact? I'm not a wizard. Neither am I. I just read the report. That's all.
And just like that, Mark Roberts doesn't just fall down the rabbit hole, he jumps in, screaming after Dylan Avery and Loose Change and all its believers, hot on their heels, yelling facts and footnotes and reality.
I would carry a binder with me.
You carried the binder with you?
Oh, sure. Yeah.
He would patrol the crowds at Ground Zero, wearing an actual name tag that said sensible person. And he would wait for the conspiracy theorists to start spouting their stuff and then pounce.
And everything they brought up, if I didn't know it from off the top of my head, I could turn to the binder and say, look, here's the rebuttal to this claim. You got it wrong. Certainly obsessed. Definitely, yeah.
If you don't talk about controlled demolition, the report is worthless.
Can you tell me what their conclusions were?
What their conclusions were? That it came apart, the floors came apart, and...
This goes on for months. Truthers versus reality at Ground Zero, bobbing and weaving among the tourists, coming to look at that big hole. A Benny Hill sketch in a graveyard.
And you've been here every week for how long?
Eternity.
And then things get weirder. First, for Dylan. Because once he opened the door of factual creative license just a smidge, there was nothing to stop others from blowing that door right off the hinges.
The first crack in the dam was definitely the theories being promoted by another 9/11 documentary called September Clues, which were saying that planes never hit the Twin Towers.
Have you seen the groups of people standing around? The groups of people standing around going, "Holy shit, a plane just hit the building." Were they all deluded? Were they all tricked?
This is Dylan at Ground Zero, arguing with another conspiracy theorist who has taken it even further, saying not only is the government behind it all, that it's an inside job, but that there were never any planes to begin with, that they were holograms to make it look like terrorism. And they start calling anyone who believes there were planes, like Dylan, a plane hugger.
A flyby plane? Yes. A flyby? A flyby? A flyby plane. You're telling me that was a flyby in downtown Manhattan. Do you think about the things that you say?
And before we knew it, we had people that, like, when the conversation of 9/11 truth came up, people would be like, oh, you don't think planes actually hit the Twin Towers? And just like all this crazy shit that we had never talked about or discussed or defended in any way. Like, planes hit the Twin Towers. Like, this is not a thing that should have to be explained, but here we are.
More of that building stuff. I got the article right here. Everybody knows the truth.
Newsweek, MSNBC, hijacked U.S. Air Base, trained at U.S. Air Base. How you gonna question?
The absurdity grows, this time for Mark, the tour guide, with his sensible person name tag and his big binder. He gets accused of being a government plant.
What they did was make it about me. Mark Roberts is CIA.
Here's Mark being confronted at Ground Zero.
Yes?
Let me ask you a question.
Do you agree
Mark,
on that?
Who's your pay instructor? Who's your paymaster? Who's your handler, man?
I've never been paid a
Mark,
cent.
You have. Mark, you're all over the map. Everybody knows you're a stooge.
Is Mark Roberts CIA?
No, Mark Roberts is not CIA. Mark Roberts is the tour guide, which nobody believed. Nobody believed.
Tell me who's paid me. I'm a tour guide.
You're a tour guide. He's a tour guide, everybody. He's a tour guide.
And then things get really surreal, in a manner you might even describe as David Lynchian.
And then, you know, you had the blame the Jews people who were mad that we didn't blame the Jews enough. And so before you know it, like, we're Zionist disinformation agents.
The more extreme conspiracy theorists begin creating conspiracy theories about Dylan himself.
It got to a point where he put out an article that basically was like, Well, Dylan Avery's father is Fred Avery, who worked at Boeing and this and that. My dad's name is Mark, and his last name is McDowell because my parents never married. Dude, like, I barely know my father.
There have been a bunch of studies done on conspiracy theories and the people who hold them. One study shows that someone who believes 9/11 was an inside job is also likely to believe that Princess Diana was assassinated by MI6, which makes its own sort of sense. But another study showed something that kind of bent my brain a little bit. It showed that someone who believes that Princess Diana was assassinated by MI6 is more likely to believe that Diana faked her own death and is still alive. Two completely incompatible beliefs. Diana was assassinated, Diana is still alive, held in the same brain of the same person at the same time. It more than just nails how ridiculous humans are. It also highlights, I think, how sensitive we are to the feeling that something is off, to the feeling that you're not seeing the whole story for what it is, and how desperate it can make us to try to make sense of that, even if the explanation we come up with doesn't quite do the trick.
The Twin Towers came down in nearly free fall speed. 200,000 tons of steel shatters into sections no longer than a couple feet long.
I believe pretty much none of the information in Dylan Avery's movie. As far as facts go, it is respectfully horseshit.
The airplane could not have flown at those speeds which they said it did.
But while it fails as an expression of factual reality, as an expression of a state of mind, of the collective nagging feeling,
Not even the experts agree with each other.
I submit to you, Loose Change is a good film because it captures that undeniable feeling of undoneness that there was to 9/11 at the time. A reluctance for some to let that moment of shifted perspective we had slip back to the way things were.
Are you angry yet? You should be.
A reluctance to let that hole get covered up with the future when we hadn't fully dealt with the past yet.
I feel like as a nation, we stopped going to therapy. The therapist is like, we really made some progress today, and I'm looking forward to our session next week. And we're like, oh, no, that was it. I'm done. I'm better now. 9/11 is like solved now, right?
And that's the crux of it, I think, that word. 9/11 as something to be solved. A Rubik's Cube, colors frustratingly jumbled, just waiting for you to put it in order. But you have to stare at it, and flip it around, and stare at it some more, and rearrange it, and look at all the sides, and put it down, and pick it up again, and stare at it. Do you know Dylan released 4 versions of this movie? There's Loose Change 2005, then Loose Change 2nd edition, then Loose Change Final Cut in 2007, and then, hilariously, one more after that in 2009. He couldn't put it down. The politics of it, the mechanics of how it happened, the feeling that secrets were being kept, and just the unbelievability that any of it had ever happened at all. He couldn't stop staring at 9/11, trying to take it all in, all of it at once.
I have an archive of not only everything that was aired, but everything that wasn't aired. There's 60, 70 different angles of the second plane hitting the South Tower.
How many angles have you seen?
Myself personally?
Yeah.
Oh, I've seen them all. And I know for a fact I've seen all of them because there is a graphic that I made that literally just starts on one of the angles and just pulls back to reveal them all, just to see every angle at once. And again, no one has tied me to a chair and has forced me to watch 9/11 footage over and over again, but it had unfortunately become my life.
Remember the people on that reality show, on that ship in the Timor Sea? They heard what had happened, but they had no images, no information, so they let it go. They put it away. Dylan Avery, a lot of people, they had the opposite problem. They couldn't unsee it. They couldn't let it go. Oddly, that is where the Dylan Averys and the rollerblading marks are the same. Neither one could let it go. They couldn't put it away.
The idea that 9/11 was used as a pretext to invade Iraq, that's not a conspiracy theory as far as I'm concerned. It is absolute reality. We were
But it is a conspiracy theory.
Well, it is.
It's just some conspiracies are true.
Some conspiracies are true, absolutely.
In a lot of ways, conspiracy is the only thing that made sense. Because if the conspiracies aren't true, if 9/11 wasn't an inside job, then we would have to confront an even more appalling truth. We had just invaded a country, spending billions of dollars and helping to cause the death of hundreds of thousands of souls because of stupidity, our ignorance, our bloody arrogance. Sometimes crazy conspiracies are attractive because the alternative is even worse.
People knew that 9/11 was coming. Somehow. Okay, I don't know how, I don't know to what extent, whether you think that the government planned it or executed it or simply allowed it to happen. The point is, people knew.
And maybe the mania in Dylan's voice isn't the sound of a liar or a kook. Maybe it's the frustration at being lost in a system too vast to ever really understand, and the twisted grief of how insignificant even the biggest losses seem to become as time moves forward.
I just feel like maybe some people should have been told, don't go into work today. Lie to the people, tell them that there's like a power outage or something. I feel that 3,000 people went to work that day that didn't get the proper warning that a lot of other people did.
Dylan's relationship to loose change today is complicated. He doesn't disavow it, but he also doesn't quite take responsibility for the misinformation in it either. In any case, he's also aware that it doesn't matter what he says, because he will be chained to it for life.
Do you regret making loose change? Like, not necessarily, but maybe I wouldn't have put my name on it.
Right, but wasn't the goal to be a filmmaker?
Well, yes, but maybe not for that to be my first big hit. I mean, I guess maybe a better way to describe it is I was hoping it would be practice, because I would still have that fresh start. You know,
You'd be free of it.
Again, like, I haven't just been sitting around just waiting for people to come talk to me about 9/11. Like, I still make movies. It's just that nobody gives a shit about them. So anyway.
In 2017, Dylan released another documentary, this one on police brutality, called Black and Blue.
Well, now there is absolutely a conspiracy to not prosecute police officers for killing people.
He's had it with docs for a while, though, trying to get back to the narrative features that he's been wanting to direct. He just finished his first full-length narrative and is submitting it to festivals as we speak. And I gotta say, from the logline alone, it just feels right. Tell me what it's about.
Well, I can sum it up very easily. Man's house gets hit by asteroid.
Slowly, the 16-acre hole begins to fill up with the future. Construction begins on the foundation in 2005. Cranes arrive in 2006, and it begins to rise above ground level, floor by floor, stopping at 104. They call it the Freedom Tower, but then change it to just One World Trade Center. It's a little less hacky. Mark Roberts, fittingly, is the first tour guide they hire to show people around the new structure and to take them to the new observation deck at the top of the tallest building in the Western Hemisphere.
You walk into the elevator, and these are some of the fastest elevators in the world. They go a total of 104 stories in 50 seconds. And you're surrounded by video screens on three sides. And then it rises up.
And a time-lapse movie begins to play on the walls all around you.
And it rises up chronologically,
showing the city age 500 years in 50 seconds, as if each wall were a window, so passengers can watch the view of Manhattan change over 5 centuries.
The first thing you see are native settlements there.
Just a few scattered structures among all the forest. Then the Europeans. Tiny houses, fort walls, then more buildings. Bridges appear, a grid. More buildings, taller and taller.
You see the Statue of Liberty pop up and the Empire State Building pop up.
And then the Twin Towers fill the screen, huge, just feet away, and then gone in seconds, like a ghost, a blip in the story of an island. And then...
Welcome to One World Observatory.
You arrive to that view. The endless city that, it turns out, doesn't go on forever. There's green and mountains and ocean.
The most exciting thing was really the people who were visiting who've never seen a view like that.
As far as 60 miles in every direction, where you can take it all in and try just for a moment and see everything, all of it at once.
But what a privilege to work in a place like that, in the city that I love, yeah.
Next time, on 9/12, fear.
I don't think I would have talked to you 15 years ago. We signed confidentiality agreements, but I mean, come on, guys, it's 20 years later.
As we detail in our report, this was a failure of policy, management, capability.
And as soon as I saw Osama bin Laden, I was like, oh, for the love of God, you know.
And above all, a failure of imagination.
What a difference a day made.
9/12 is produced by Courtney Harrell. Our associate producer is Natalie Brennan. Our researcher is Jessica Lessenhop. Our senior producer is Henry Malofsky. Joel Lovell and Maddie Sprung-Kaiser are our editors. Production assistance and research by Maria Alexa Kavanaugh. Fact-checking by Sarah Ivry. Original music by Daniel Herskadal, with Espen Berg on the piano and Jakob Jansson on drums. Music licensing by Dan Kanishkawi. Special thanks to Mark Fenster for conversations that helped us shape this episode. 9/12 is written and executive produced by me. I'm Dan Taberski. Jenna Weiss-Berman and Max Linsky are the executive producers at Pineapple Street. From Amazon Music, our executive producer is Morgan Jones. Marshall Louis is the executive producer from Wondery. The next episode will be out in a week, or you can binge all 7 episodes free on Amazon Music or with Wondery Plus.
Lord, what a difference a day makes. There's a rainbow before me.
I'm about to play you a preview of Suspect. While you're listening, make sure to follow Suspect wherever you get your podcasts, or binge the full season right now on Amazon Music or with Wondery Plus.
Arpana was just so excited. I mean, it was her first Halloween.
There's people smoking weed, people getting drunk.
Typical younger 20s.
Normal party for the Northwest.
Very fun-looking Halloween party. It just happened to end in tragedy.
She grabbed her keys and she left, and I never saw her again.
911, what are you? Hello? Hello? Okay, please come. Please, stop your unconscious.
When Arpana Janaga was killed after a Halloween party at her apartment complex, the murderer could have been anyone.
It was a classic whodunit with people dressed in Halloween costumes. Was it the gangster? Was it Jesus' secretary?
They had quite a long beard.
Was a construction worker?
Little Red Riding Hood.
All those people.
But eventually, DNA evidence would lead police to one suspect.
You've been charged with murder for 45 years to life or whatever?
DNA is a science that lots of people have become accustomed to treating like a guilt meter, a truth meter. But what if it doesn't always work that way?
I mean, is one piece of DNA on a piece of duct tape in a party, is that beyond a reasonable doubt?
What if this time it led investigators to the wrong guy? Follow Suspect on Apple Podcasts, Amazon Music, or you can binge all 9 episodes ad-free by subscribing to Wondery Plus in Apple Podcasts or the Wondery app. The Wondery app. The Wondery app. The Wondery app. The Wondery app.